I'm Claudine Wong, joining you from the San Francisco Bay Area. Very excited to be joined by Adam Lippin, who is with Cuddlist and the HearMe app, which was just launched, the co-founder of both. Adam, so glad to be able to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So let's kind of go back to, let's kind of start from square one a little bit in terms of who you are and why these companies, they all have a theme, right? They all have a theme that really values human interaction, human touch, you know, and in this space that says we need each other and we need to reach out and connect with each other. Why has this become such a passion for you?
Well, thank you for asking. So, I mean, the sort of nut of it is I have been, historically, I spent, kind of decades feeling very isolated and very sort of disconnected. And in my personal journey, I've done everything from be a, pretty bad drug addict to practice yoga and meditation. And I've sort of tried every sort of avenue to escape from what I'm feeling and sort of escape that sense of loneliness and disconnection. And I realized the only way sort of, it's like that cliche is like through it, right? And I'm never going to really become truly comfortable with who I am and really sort of be, I need to connect with other people, right? The thing I've been sort of running from is sort of what I decided, what I knew I really needed. And so I started companies to really start to address the need for human connection.
So that the drug addiction, the battle, the turning to yoga, did that start at a very young age? Did that come to you as a circumstance or come to you as kind of the human condition that we all kind of battle on various levels and address through various ways?
Yeah. So, well, I've always been drawn to sort of like yoga meditation. I have this draw sort of Eastern philosophy. I remember reading a book by Martin Buber, a great sort of thinker, and the book is called I and Thou, and it's like the basically the little I and the big I. And in order to have a full connection, in order to sort of see the divine, for lack of a better way of saying it, you need to be in connection with another person. So I've sort of always known that, and yet that's been also really hard for me. So I've tried sort of spiritual growth through yoga and meditation, and then the drugs were sort of an escape. And so I've always sort of sought out some sort of relief, and I really realized that only through true human connection can you really sort of, really fully be yourself. And so that's sort of been my passion.
Was there a specific turning point? Was there, people have said from rock bottom to the journey continues to I still deal with it to, life is a journey, right? It's not necessarily the destination where everything's solved in one moment. But what do you think turned you into this place where now not only could you solve your own, or not solve, but address your own, feelings, but now also start these companies that address it for other people?
So I'm also gay, and I also lived in New York during the AIDS crisis. And so especially in terms of Cuddlist, I saw sort of a cohort of men like me. Right now, I think I'm fully integrated. I'm really happy. Not that everyone wants to be married and have a child and a dog, but sort of like that's the life I live now. But I looked at other people in my cohort. Some of them became so lonely, like that loneliness was sort of calcified into their being. And others maybe acted out ways sexually for like decades that doesn't serve them, but they didn't know any other way to get any kind of human connection. So the original idea was to sort of figure out a way to have both of those types of populations sort of feel some kind of human connection. So that was sort of the original genesis behind Cuddlist.
And did you feel like there was a taboo to having that human connection in some way, that people felt like they couldn't get it or they weren't? I mean, obviously you're talking about a group of people that in the AIDS crisis that were not getting it, and but in that population, in the general population, that we're just not doing this enough in general to help ourselves.
So, in terms of touch, as babies, if we're lucky, we're held a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And we have a real need for touch. I mean, there's studies, the Romanian orphanages, for example, it's like it's fairly evident. So our need for touch doesn't necessarily change as we get older, but our access to it does change. And we're not even aware that we're not getting some basic needs met, and therefore you have some ways of being and thinking and acting which are not healthy, and that can lead to sort of some other, other sort of, negative consequences, right?
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time and energy working with my business partner, Madeline Guinazzo on Cuddlist to kind of, how do we medicalize touch? How do we put a safe container around it with boundaries and empowerment to make sure that it can happen in a way that is safe, that is consent-based, and that's actually healing.
Okay, so yeah, I do remember. I will say that when and here's just a video that explains Cuddlist. When this came out, people were saying there are hug therapists, and the reactions were interesting to this idea. This started in what year?
2016, January of 16.
What kind of reactions did you get from your?
You're doing what? What are you kidding me? Are you crazy? And I personally, I like going places. I like that. I like sort of like finding a challenge. And if I believe in something, I don't really care what anyone else thinks, right?
Right.
I believe in this concept. I know how important touch is. And I know that a lot of people don't have access to it. Like I was on some TV show, and it was the founder of Tinder and the founder of some dating app called The League, right? And so I was saying, well, what about people that don't get swiped on Tinder? What about people that would never get accepted to The League? What about people that are like physically, have some physical challenges? What about if you're severely overweight? What about if you lost a loved one? Everyone deserves access to touch, and not all of us are lucky enough to have it. So that was sort of like my go-to sort of argument, or sort of.
Well, and so you have the people who are like, that's what is happening, what is this hug therapy? But then you have people who sign up, right? I mean, were you able to say this is working? Whatever naysayers there are, we're seeing people who are signing up and getting a benefit from this.
So I'm able to say it on like a business level. We've trained over 1,800 Cuddlist practitioners, and we've had over 40,000 client sessions to date. And what we've found is that it really benefits people. And so this sort of takes us a bit into HearMe. In 2018, I really studied it. We hired a research firm. People love touch, but they really loved feeling seen, heard, and validated, and that was missing. They missed human connection. So the idea was like, okay, Cuddlist, because of the nature of it, might not be a worldwide scalable business, but everyone has the ability anyone can be listened to. And that one thing I learned with Cuddlist is that these practitioners are loving, incredibly warm people, and people want to be of service to other people. So that gave rise to HearMe. And the concept.
I mean, so you were thinking about HearMe, sorry to interrupt you, but before the world that we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, we launched a few months ago, pre-COVID. I mean, it was sort of like kind of coming up, but the concept way before COVID and this sort of like incredible pervasive loneliness and anxiety that we're all living in now. Loneliness has been a major health crisis for a very long time. The Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, under Obama, said that loneliness is the #1 health crisis facing the country and the world. It's has a more negative impact than smoking 15 cigarettes a day or obesity. In 2018, Cigna came out with a study stating this really horrific fact that the loneliest people are the youngest people. So 18 to 22-year-olds are lonelier than any other population, and it's getting worse. And they've reconfirmed it in 2020, and the numbers are getting worse. So
it's interesting to me. I would think the interesting thing about this platform, among other things, is that people find connection, young people, through technology in a way that I, like to actually go see people. And maybe that's a generational thing, but you can also attack loneliness through technology in a way that reaches younger people as well, maybe even better than or
right.
even quickly when an older generation, because they are used to that kind of interaction in terms of having that be a place where they feel less lonely.
Right, they're digital natives and they text. The problem is, how do we use technology to solve some of the problems that the overuse of technology created, right? Social media is a lot of fun, et cetera, but it also, people that are heavy users of social media are less happy, right? People that overuse technology, we're not putting our real self, we're putting our false self up, and there's that fear of missing out. And so technology is wonderful. And it's also created a generation of people that are more anxious, they're more depressed, they're more lonely, they're less able to sort of cope in the world. So
Okay. So yeah. So you were addressing all those issues with first Cuddlist and then the venture into HearMe, and then COVID hits.
Right.
Which then changes anything. And I don't know if we explained it as well, but Cuddlist basically, I mean, when you went in there, you basically got to cuddle.
Yeah,
a set amount of time.
For a
platonic cuddling.
exactly.
Just,
Now,
yes.
And now if you go to Cuddlist, all of our sessions are virtual, and people are really, it's kind of amazing the experience people are having on that. Thank you.
Yes,
so
I'll put it up there.
the basic concept of Cuddlist, whether it's touch or virtual, is unconditional positive regard. Many of us are not, to have someone focus their attention entirely on you for an hour, however long it is, where you're being nurtured and you're being sort of having your needs met without having to worry about caretake for someone else, is very, very positive. And for many of us, that's a really big deal. We don't have it. We don't have that sort of nurturing, that sort of deep understanding. So HearMe, exactly. It's an anonymous way to connect in under a minute with a live, trained human being through a text-based chat.
So so this started 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
Okay. And 24 hours a day, you
24
can do
hours
this?
a day. We're available. Well, we're available anywhere in the world, but we have listeners and members in over 20 countries right now. And people, in terms of COVID-19, everyone is feeling COVID-19 related stress and anxiety. There's an expression that I love is, you can't fix normal, right? And right now it's very normal to be anxious and fear. And, we're all living through this pandemic right now. But what's important for that is that you have someone to talk to, you have someone to share what you're going through, you have an understanding ear, and you can feel that you're connecting with a human being to sort of at least have that connection, and that can help you feel better. And
so, it's interesting to me that you call it HearMe, but no one's actually talking.
Right. I mean, we are coming out with the voice and video capability, but right now it's all text-based chat. Exactly. And the loneliest, the population, or people that are using the app are primarily digital natives that communicate via text. And a lot of people, especially younger people, it's too scary for them for voice and video. When was the last time a 22-year-old picked up a phone, right? So they're texting and they feel more comfortable in this medium.
So, in this space, people are going to ask, right? Are they therapists? What training do they have? Right. What if you get someone who's really in trouble? How do you address that so that you don't end up making it worse because you're not trained to deal with that? I mean, those are, I'm sure, all these the concerns that were brought up as this was.
So we're what's known as subclinical, right? We are not here designed to solve or address clinical issues. So if you have severe depression, if you have anything that has a clinical label, you can reach out and we can have conversations with you. But we're not designed to solve any critical issue, any mental illness, right? That's strictly for therapists. But if anyone is expressing anything that requires more significant help, we refer them out to the suicide hotline and to various organizations that are equipped to deal with people that are going through really serious challenges. So basically there's a concept, and it sort of was studied in the recovery movement, Alcoholics Anonymous, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And it's a concept called the helper model. And the helper model states that when one person who's been through what someone has been through is available for them, both parties benefit. So there's this inherent satisfaction and healing power that comes when one person can authentically communicate with another person what they're going through, and that person can see, hear, and validate them for who they are, and possibly share something similar that they've been through to create identification. So a lot of times in therapy, if you go to therapy, by definition, you're there to solve a problem. You're there to be helped, which creates an unequal balance in a relationship, which can give you a different outcome. I'm not knocking therapy. It's wonderful. I've been in therapy myself. But we are a peer platform that connects people who want to be there. Right? People are signing up and volunteering in droves, going through a really wonderful training program in order to be there for other people that need it at that time.
Well, it's the be a friend. I mean, I've seen it on even next door where someone's like, if anyone just needs to talk, if
Right.
you're living alone, and certainly, you know, a lot of people, some people have full houses of people and they would like a second by themselves, you know, in some spaces, and some people would love to be able to have someone over at their house just once, just for an hour, because they are by themselves. And I think that we've seen a lot of people, you know, even just adopting a pet because
Yeah.
loneliness we're trying to address in a way that is unfortunately it's seemingly long term, and that doesn't address. I mean, I was interested by this survey that you guys shared, you know, where this is what you were talking about a little bit earlier. Yeah, I mean, with just this is pre-COVID, right? You know, that the people already felt this way. You have 56% of 18 to 24-year-olds feel less connected. I mean, it's a tough world we're living in.
Yeah. So what HearMe, you know, someone described, there was a story about, like, a solve, like, we're here to be supportive and we're not here to fix you, because no matter how much people will say they're broken, you're not broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may have some issues that you have to deal with, but the power of a shared human connection, the power of unconditional positive regard, the power of sort of like being present and sharing your presence with another person is incredibly powerful medicine. And
Yeah.
it's free and it's available to all. And the wonderful thing about it is the people that are, quote unquote, offering the support are getting as much benefit as the people giving the support. And it can go both ways. You can be a member, and then you can sign up to be a listener and offer your support to someone else. And our training program is really fantastic. And then we have ongoing training and support. So for example, we had Professor Dr. Karen Dopkins on a training call yesterday, who was talking. She studies loneliness. She's a loneliness expert at UC San Diego, talking about how you feel embodied
Mm-hmm.
affects your level of loneliness. So we have a wide range of experts helping to train and resource our listeners to improve their skills and become better people.
Yeah, I mean, you have, you know, and I wonder if the people who are signing up, I mean, you talk so much about the young people. Are the people signing up? Can you even tell? I don't know what they have to put in to become a member, where their age range is versus the listeners, and
Right.
where they're, you know, is it peer to peer at this point? And it does it matter as long as someone's listening?
So first of all, the app is for people 18 and over. So if you're younger than 18, there are other resources. Go to Lady Gaga's foundation. They have a lot of resources for people under 18. So HearMe.app is for people if you're 18 and over, and that goes with Cuddlist as well. Our listeners are 18 through 70. They are from New York and they're from Mumbai, India. They're all over the place and they come from many different backgrounds. Some of them are parents. Some of them actually, a good percentage actually have, you know, degrees as a therapist, but they find this practice of just listening really powerful. When you're on the app, you get to choose essentially a gender or no gender and an age range of the people that you prefer to speak with. So, you know, I'm 56. I may not be, I'll certainly talk to anyone, but a 19-year-old with relationship issues might want to speak to someone a little closer to their age cohort. But basically anyone of any age, 18 and over, we call people members that use the service as well as listeners.
Yeah. How long do these conversations go?
That's a fascinating thing. So when we started, we anticipated conversations to last about 15 minutes. The average length of our conversation is now 27.7 minutes. Some of them go a lot longer. So there are people that are really engaging and sharing what they're going through and obviously feeling supported in that, based, number one, on our ratings and based on the fact that they're staying on the calls for as long as they are.
And things are private. I mean, I'm assuming that
Yeah,
privacy.
we are GDPR compliant. So fully, the listeners, you will see their actual face and their actual bio once they're connected to them. But members, the users are completely anonymous.
So I wonder, you know, what if, someone wants to have a much longer conversation. They want to have a 2-hour conversation because they're living at home and it's just really
Yeah.
helping them. But the listener has to leave because they
Yeah.
can't stay on. Do they pass them along? I mean, is there, because I would imagine for someone feeling lonely, if your listener doesn't have time for you, not because they don't want to, but because maybe they can't, that can be a difficult position to be in
Yeah.
as well.
So that's a really great point. And sort of one of the underlying philosophies of Cuddlist as well as HearMe is the concept of empowerment. So whether you're a Cuddlist or a listener, you're empowered to make the decisions that are right for you. And it's very hard to be available for someone if you're not feeling resourced enough to be in that conversation, to be open and honest and have present, be present. So if someone is, if a listener, for whatever reason the chat ends, maybe the listener says it was really wonderful speaking with you. I'm really enjoyed that I had this time. I thank you for reaching out, however, and I need to go now. Feel free to, reach out to someone else. There'll always be someone available for you. So there are people, we have members that have 5, 6, 7, 8 long chats a day. Some people come in, they get a 15-minute tune up and they're fine. We also have this wonderful part of our app. It's called the dedicated listener chat. So let's say you talk to a listener and you identify and you have a good relationship with them and you want to stay in touch with them. The listener has the option of inviting you to a dedicated chat, which is like a text. You're basically texting, asynchronistic. So I have like 9 people now that, hey, how you doing? How's your Wednesday? I'm feeling really down. Do you have a minute? So you can have longer term relationships with the listeners or as a listener to just create more sense of community. And
so you serve as a listener yourself?
Yeah, I'm on a lot. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been great because from a business perspective, sort of like really understanding, who's using our service, but it feeds me. It serves my soul. There's no greater feeling and than being there for someone else. I mean, it's like you want to feel better, go do something for someone else, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, yes.
The universal truth. And, we're an incredibly generous nation. 1 out of 4 Americans volunteer. And around the world, it's generally the same or even higher. So people want to be of service. A lot of people just don't know how to. So we give people with loving, gentle, warm hearts that want to be available to be there for someone else, the opportunity to do that. And that's great.
How many of your HearMe listeners were Cuddlist therapists? And are they still able, I imagine some of them were doing it for income, and now this COVID world, and then the business model we should ask is, are they still able to transition and being a listener on the HearMe app? Is it a
strictly volunteer
basis?
So in terms of Cuddlist, we've transitioned obviously to virtual sessions, and the numbers are not like what they were, but people are still requesting sessions, and I haven't done any. I'm not a Cuddlist practitioner myself, but we just had we have these community calls, and people that are having the sessions are expressing that they're getting a lot of satisfaction from it, that it's more powerful than they even thought it would be. So a lot of Cuddlist practitioners are listeners on the platform, but that's just because they want to be, and they knew about it because I was developing the company at the same time, but they're not getting paid for it. No one gets paid.
Yeah, is the model to keep it that way, that what you have to do is a little bit of a training though, right? To be a listener, which takes
wonderful training.
And how long?
Well, the initial training will take about an hour, and you just go to the app, HearMe.app, and sign up to be a listener. You'll get sent a training link. But after you do that training, you're plugged into this network of community where ongoing training and support. There's 1 or 2 trainings and/or sort of events and get-togethers that happen on a daily basis on the app or through Zoom.
And I think that's a bonding thing too, that you're talking about the benefit of being a part of it. You are also part of that community of, of people who are learning from it. I wonder, and I know that, the conversations are private, but, this is one of those things that you had up there from, just saying 1/3 of respondents to the survey that you guys just did know someone who likely has COVID. Is there a sense that a lot of the discussions that you're having, are COVID related? Here, there's a screen.
I would say at this point, a large percentage of them at least start out as COVID related. The reason someone's expressing that they're calling is to share what they're going through relating to COVID. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, I've had conversations with people in Lebanon and a lot of people in India and Singapore and Brazil. I mean, everyone is sort of on some variation of a lockdown, or their lives have been severely disrupted. So a lot of the calls are very COVID related, and there's a lot of real world things that people are dealing with: unemployment, deaths, family members not being able to see, the whole, we all know the stories, right? And a lot of times it goes past that. So people start talking about what's happening with the person that they're in a lockdown with, or how they're feeling about a relationship, or they go into a particular issue that they're dealing with, or something they want to talk about as well.
Yeah. How do you handle the language barriers if you're talking about going to all the different
I
countries?
had a conversation with someone who only speaks Arabic through text, through emojis, and it was actually a wonderful conversation. What we are starting to, and so there is some language barrier sometimes. What we are now going to be doing is very soon anyway, you'll have to be able to have enough English to get through the initial part of like requesting, but you can request someone based on a language that they speak as well.
Okay, I was going to translate.
Yeah.
A full emoji conversation. That's impressive.
The human condition is the human condition. I mean, It is amazing. I mean, it just is. I mean, we're all, there are obviously different cultural sensitivities, and different, governments handle this very differently, and people's relationships are very different. But the person, the 48-year-old mother with 9 kids in the Philippines that I spoke to, essentially, is not that different from a 19-year-old kid in New York City, in terms of when we all put our head down to the pillow, we all basically have the same fears, desires, anxieties, and sort of thoughts. And so we operate on that humanistic level, not on like an individual. We're not solving your individual problem level.
And I would think, for those who don't want to have the, continued chat, maybe they just want to have the chat with Adam, and then they're going to throw that one into the wind because they just needed to vent. And, I hear people say they don't want to tell their parents if they get in a fight with their spouse, because then they forget to tell them that things are good. And then their parents think, oh, they're on the rocks, right? It's sometimes less pressure to just let it all go to someone who will let it go at the end of the conversation as well.
Yeah. If you talk to most of our family, friends, members, everyone's going to have advice. There's a point where they're going to want to talk about themselves and make it about themselves, and take the hell out of you. And obviously, we're, as human beings, we're always pinging off each other, and, microaggressions, and that's just part of life. But to have a space where the focus is on you, to share about what you want to share about, and someone will share about themselves to the extent that it enhances the conversation, but it's not like, okay, we talked enough about you, now let's talk about me.
Baggage free. I love it. Baggage free and focused, directly on what you need to talk about. There's that term that says there's an app for that. You have your app. Are there other apps in this space that are trying to address this same human condition that you're trying to address?
So there are apps that are like AI, CBT, like there's a lot of sort of apps that have their express sort of desire to have more clinical outcomes. So they're operating on a different level, but there are wonderful apps out there. I mean, I use Calm, I use Headspace, slightly different. I haven't found one that addresses loneliness or emotional wellness or mental health through the lens of connecting people to have conversations with no outcome other than to be present for each other. Most other services that I'm aware of are more sort of mental wellness, mental health outcome oriented.
Yeah. So what is the big picture view of this? I mean, there is what is the long-term, plan in terms of gauging success, where you go from here, how you expand it. I mean, you talked a little bit about expanding into languages and making it, bigger. How do you, I mean, if everyone's a volunteer, you have lower overhead, which is something to move forward. But where do you go from here, from cuddling to listening to growing? How does it?
Obviously, at some point, we will figure out how to make, how to monetize and how to support ourselves. Right now, especially with COVID-19, we're focused on letting as many people as possible know about the app and get on it and get support from it. We have a business partner called Global Health Strategy. They're a worldwide advocacy organization for health issues who's helping us scale this worldwide. So right now our mission is to get out there because we see that people are really having positive experiences. In a few months or at some point, we'll, take a breath and see, okay, is there any way to turn this into a business with a lot of traction that can actually make money and be of service to other people at the same time?
Yeah. Has it gone the way you thought it would? I mean, 15,000 users, 1,000 I almost said therapists, but listeners, sorry,
Yep.
listeners. Is that what you targeted, or did you kind of go into it? Let's see how this
Yeah.
goes. Let's see how we can do this.
So it's, it's definitely succeeded in terms of those raw numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's about are the interactions meaningful and are people feeling supported through using our app? Like that's the metric that I wanted. If we don't have that metric, we could have 1 million users. Like there are tons of games and other things that have 1 billion users and people, but I'm in this because I really believe that humans need to be more connected. Loneliness and all the comorbidity stuff that happens around loneliness is a really major health issue, and it's a huge issue to be addressed. I owned a restaurant chain called Atomic Wings, little plug there. So not that I don't want to make money in my life moving forward, but this was really I spent 25 years selling chicken wings, and I was like, I want to do something meaningful in my life. I'm not, 24 anymore. And this is something that I will feel really good if more people can feel supported. And the reality is, especially with COVID-19, pre-COVID-19, even if therapy, there will never be enough therapists in the world to address everyone that has a mental health challenge. So, right, that's just, and now forget about it. It's so much work. So if HearMe.app can take some pressure off the more traditional mental health system, because potentially by sharing what you're going through, you can sort of at least tampen down some issues that can develop into mental health issues. We can be really of service in that regard. So I think right now we want to be a large scale player because it's a very simple, elegant, free solution that anyone with an iPhone or an Android can tap into.
Yeah, it sounds great. I should just check the box and make sure we ask too, that if someone is on HearMe.app and on your app and has a listener and feels like something is falling into therapy or falling into some place it shouldn't, there is a way to report it and you guys will address it.
Yeah, there's a report button. So when someone's reported, we look into it immediately. If something's inappropriate, we get them off. One of the things, that's so wonderful. So there are a few other sort of listening services and they're filled with trolls. I hate to say it, but just like the internet is filled with trolls.
Right. You don't want someone who's vulnerable though. Yeah. Being targeted again. Yeah.
Yeah. The trolls, I'm talking more about people that are, so in terms of vulnerable populations, if you're a vulnerable person and you're on the app, we will do our best to give you an outside resource that can be helpful for you. If you're someone who has serious mental illness, you can have a serious mental illness, you can have clinical depression, etc. We can still share with you what you're going through, but it's on the level of, we're there for you for right now, but we're not there to solve a problem. A mental illness, a mental.
So yeah, but in the trolls that you're talking about in the other realm, are there other ways that, I feel like I interrupted you really quickly, so I wanted to make sure that you got to finish that thought.
So, you want to be able, the most important thing is that you feel safe. The most important thing is that you feel like you're speaking to a real person who's there for the reason to be supportive of you, right? So we put in some privacy practices in place to not allow people who are historically trolls to come in. So we require a real email, a real phone number instead of an email. So we've been able to really attack the troll problem in a really significant way right off the bat.
That's good. Well, I think, you've had the experience before and you want to make sure that, that people get the listening ear they need without it being, a place where they feel like they didn't get something from it. I think it's a fascinating idea. And I think a lot of people, just the chance to reach out for 5 minutes or 30 or just a couple of texts. I think that is, it is interesting to see where this will head as we all need human interaction in some way, and unfortunately the social distancing works against that in many ways for us. So we're in a
we're sort of forced to find new ways to communicate. And I gotta say, even before COVID-19, and this is what got me into this whole Cuddlist as well as HearMe, there are many people that have no one to talk to. There are many people that, you know, don't have satisfying relationships, that don't have a nurturing person to speak with. So that is what this is, pre-COVID-19 and hopefully after COVID-19, right? There's always a human condition where people,
yes.
I would love to live in a world where everyone has someone to share with whenever they want to, et cetera. But unfortunately, it's not the case for many people.
It's not the case. And yes, so it may not have been a COVID-19 brainchild, but your timing is probably so helpful and necessary in this time that we didn't anticipate 6 months ago that we would be, you know, chin deep into now. So
I feel grateful that we're part of the system that can help provide support for people right now. It feels really amazingly gratifying. I can't tell you how much personal satisfaction I get from it.
Absolutely. Well, you've got your at least 9 chats, and I imagine those will continue to grow. Adam Liven, thanks so much for the conversation. Best of luck with Cuddlist and the HearMe app as more listeners and more people who just want to be heard log on.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Great talking with you too.